Thanks for tuning in on Daddy Spotlights. I'm Xiao Tai.
I'm Belinda.
So we have special guest today, all the way from France, school representative of ONCampus Paris, Will.
Hello. Really glad to be here in Malaysia again. I really enjoy being here. I used to live here once upon a time.
Welcome to
Oh, yes,
Malaysia.
absolutely. Yeah.
Have
So-
you eaten your favorite food in Malaysia? Or?
What's your
Haven't
favorite?
Haven't had the pleasure. I'll sort of make sure I have some nasi goreng later on.
Oh, nasi goreng. Okay,
You pronounce very good.
Usually people say nasi lemak.
Goreng.
Probably
Oh.
nasi goreng will be their favorite. Okay. You know?
Okay, so Belinda and I actually been to Paris for a few days. It wasn't a long trip, so we invite Will here to share more about the France, the culture. And so could you please briefly tell us the culture and also what's the environment of the France?
Yeah, good question. It's the kind of question where I could talk for days on this because there's so much to talk about because it is France, of course. And my name is Will and I'm the Business Development Director for a company called ONCampus Paris. And our job is to help students get into top institutions in French to fulfill their dreams. We've been doing that for the past 2 or 3 years and it's become quite interesting. We now have about 150 students from all over the world studying in our campus in Paris. And they've come for many different reasons. Some have come out of curiosity because it's Paris, because Paris is the kind of place that everyone dreams about going to. You know, people grow up in different countries around the world and they might dream of going to New York, some might dream of going to London, and some might dream of going to other places, but everybody dreams about going to Paris. To such an extent that in addition to you two, France had 90 million other visitors last year as well. It is the most popular destination in the world for tourism.
Yeah,
because
that's
everybody
true.
wants to go there. And they go there for different reasons. They go for the monuments, the museums, the art galleries. They go for the food, the culture, the films, the art, the literature, the love, the romance. It's the city of dreams. It's the kind of thing where you can find what you want. And it holds such a special place in most people's hearts that everybody at least once in their lifetime wants to go there. It's almost like a kind of pilgrimage that you have to make to Paris at some point in your life. But what we try to do is we try to encourage people to see Paris not just simply as this, great big tourist theme park. It is that on the one hand, but it also is a normal living city. And it's a very, very popular student city. It's in the top 5 student cities in the world. So we encourage people to come who are going to be coming and living, breathing, walking, talking, eating, sleeping Paris and seeing it as a student where you have so many opportunities there. All those museums and monuments and art galleries, they're not just something that you visit once. There are 40,000 of them in Paris, monuments. There are 400 different museums. And for our students, a lot of those are free or at very, very low cost because they get student discount cards. So what you have is this huge, great, big, massive sort of opportunity to really enjoy the lifestyle and the culture. But in addition to that, it is a place where we go because it's a huge economy. It has excellent career prospects for students. It's a science powerhouse. It's a technology powerhouse. And these are the things that we try to do is to try and demystify France because here in Malaysia, we're attuned to welcoming students to the UK, to Australia, to Canada, to the USA, to the English-speaking destinations. But when you dive into France, you find out it has so many surprises and so many opportunities for students from here and everywhere else, China and beyond.
Basically, how do you think that the trend of studying in France, because like you say, some students will have a US dream because of Hollywood maybe, and then if not, I'm quite fall into Emily in Paris. Okay, some people will say like, how could like Emily be so fashion, so modern in the TV? I would like to explore more in Paris or in France. Do you think that is this like this kind of, I would say, how to say, these vibes brings any effects to studying in France or Paris?
Surprisingly, it does. It's an interesting thing because I was talking earlier on about the 40,000 museums and monuments. But surprisingly, the latest statistics show that 38% of people who want to go to Paris are coming because they've seen Emily in Paris, which is quite surprising. But you can see it's not surprising because it's such a beautiful program. The city is gorgeous, the people are gorgeous, the food is gorgeous, the wine is gorgeous, everything about it is gorgeous. But it is and there's a really interesting story about that, because I don't know if anybody's been watching the show recently, but Emily is no longer in Paris. So she's
Rome.
she's in Rome. She's got bored of French boys, and now she's interested in Italian boys. So she's gone to Rome. And of course, Rome's getting all this intelligence of this beautiful city full of monuments and museums and art galleries and food and romance and culture and life and love. And to such an extent that Macron, who's the president of France, the most powerful man in France, got on the phone to Netflix, and the conversation went like this. It was like, hello, is that Netflix? Yes, this is Netflix. Who are you? I'm Emmanuel Macron. Right, okay. We want Emily back in Paris. What? You know Emily? Yeah, we want her back in Paris. Why? Because it's called Emily in Paris.
Yeah, we started from
Absolutely.
Emily in Paris.
But what Macron is annoyed about is he fears that sort of a lot of the attention will shift to Italy. And also his wife, who is about 30 years older than him as well.
Yes.
There's an interesting story there as well. She's a fan of the show, and she actually appeared in that. So she said, "Can we get Emily back in Paris instead of there?" But joking apart, actually, there is a really interesting connection that we have with Emily in Paris, because one of our partners is a school called LISA, which stands for the l'Institut Supérieur des Arts Appliqués, which means in French the Higher Institute of Applied Arts. This is one of the top 5 design schools in France. In fact, it is the biggest design school in France, and that's one of our partners where we attract students to go to do different types of programs like fashion design, pattern design, textile design, production, fashion management, luxury brand management, and so on and so forth. This is located literally just 2 minutes around the corner from where Emily is filmed. And so all the scenes that you see there are the scenes where our students are actually studying, because it is one of the coolest parts of Paris. But you're right, you're absolutely right. France is a country of possibilities which go above and beyond that. It's not something that is on the radar of many Malaysian students and students in wider Asia, because France has only just recently, in the past couple of years, opened up to the idea of welcoming international students. Now, interestingly, it is the 3rd biggest destination for international students, but most of those students come from countries with whom France has a very, very long and established history, i.e. they speak French in North Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, and so on and so forth. So those students have been coming for years. But France is obviously trying to attract more diversity, which is why they're looking for students to come from other parts of Asia, from India, from Pakistan, from China, from Southeast Asia, from the Middle East, from South America, and so on. So they've gone on a kind of charm drive, and we're helping them with that. So we are at the moment the only pathway provider working in the French sphere, trying to open up the French sort of institutions, the top French institutions, to sort of students from all over the world, and not just from the French-speaking world. Obviously, the medium for that is English. They have to speak English. So what you'll find is that France 20 years ago was a little bit more reluctant to have programs which were in English. There weren't as many. Nowadays, they seem to dominate international education in France at the moment. So the clientele that we're going for are students who are interested in coming in English courses. So again, I use this phrase quite a lot. You'll be living, breathing, walking, talking, eating, sleeping English. But we do teach French as well in order to enjoy the country more. And I guarantee we'll teach you French to a higher standard than Emily Collins. Emily,
Paris.
What's her second name? Emily Cooper is her name. Yeah, Emily Cooper. Lily Collins is the actress.
So she actually doesn't speak very fluently in French in this drama. So if international students can't speak fluent, they can work in France, can they?
Yeah, surprisingly, and this isn't really interesting. One of the biggest pushbacks we have had in the past 2 years of trying to kind of promote France as an active international education destination is, will I have to learn French? Will I have a language barrier? Will there be a language barrier? Now, I always use the phrase, it's not a language barrier, it's a language opportunity. If you have to learn French, it's a good thing. But the thing is, the students don't have to learn French. If they come to France and they're studying in a program like ours, and we have programs which and partners who specialize in the field of business, all aspects of business, banking, from finance to technology management to Bitcoin to financial technology, the whole gamut of business. And if they want to go and do fashion design or fashion management or anything in the fashion business or luxury brand business, or if they want to go and do sort of, artificial intelligence, STEM-related subjects, which obviously are very technical and very kind of advanced, or if they want to go into the hospitality and tourism sphere, all of the programs we're doing are in English. And those areas tend to be dominated by English language programs in France, because France, of course, for many, many years, for many decades, needed to catch up with the English-speaking world. And there was a reluctance to really fully embrace English. For example, I was talking yesterday to a parent in Vietnam, and the parent was saying that she was a student in Nice 20 years ago, and she found it difficult to communicate because people were more reluctant to speak English. She said that when she went back on a holiday last year, everyone speaks English now. And it's the same in Paris. I mean, you yourselves have probably experienced this, that, you sit down in a cafe, they'll come and approach you in French. As soon as they realize you're English, they'll bring you an English menu.
Yeah.
And they'll all be sort of really, really happy to speak to you. As a rough rule of thumb, I would say that sort of everybody in Paris and the big cities speaks English well. And not only just speaks it well, but they're actually happy to speak it. Another rough rule of thumb I have is that people your age tend to speak English. If they're my age or older, and I know you think I'm younger than I actually am. You're probably thinking, what, 27, 28?
I think, same age.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, yeah. So I was thinking you would look a bit older than me. But I was thinking, actually, so anybody who's older than me tends not to speak it as well, or is a bit more reluctant. However, it is spoken very, very widely. And that's important as well, because the jobs we're having are, France is obviously a major superpower when it comes to economics and technology, and, plays a major role in the world economy. It's the sixth largest economy in the world. So it's a major player. And obviously, to really thrive in the current globalized business environment, English is the major language of communication. So if you go into a top French multinational organization, English will be the sort of the main language spoken. French is nice to have. It's good to have because you'll appreciate the country more. I mean, if I ever come to live in Malaysia, I would learn Bahasa, but I lived in Malaysia for 2 years and my Bahasa is pretty poor. Terima kasih, thank you very much for laughing. But my Bahasa is pretty poor. My Hokkien even worse. My Cantonese is non-existent. So I'm joking. I don't speak any of those languages. But if you go to France, obviously it's nice to speak French, and of course it will help you get your internship. So France is all about careers, not jobs. It is the kind of country which is welcoming and embracing the idea of welcoming international students. But they're quite clear. They don't want to just open up to jobs. They don't want the next generation of Uber drivers or people delivering pizzas. They want the next generation of lawyers, engineers, IT specialists, artificial intelligence engineers, entrepreneurs, those kind of things. They're looking for people to provide added value and see France not just simply as a place to sort of earn money and then kind of live in the black economy. They're looking at that as a means of kind of developing careers, because in France, like any other Western environment, you've got sort of this many jobs and you've got this many people, and there's a kind of disconnect. So you have to make that up with international students who are qualified. In other words, the right kind of immigration is what they're looking for. And that's where we fit in, because our programs lead into what we call Grande École, which are the French equivalent of the most elite group of universities, like the Russell Group in the UK, the Group of 8 in Australia. So we work specifically with Grande École programs. These are the places where students go if they absolutely positively want to get to the very, very best in the business. If they want to get the top jobs, that's where they would go. And because employers look to those students to kind of get the internships, get the jobs, obviously provide the basis for managers and directors in the future. So it's a stepping stone that works very, very well. It's just something that most students in this part of the world are not so aware of, because they tend to kind of focus on the English-speaking destinations. But if you consider France to be an English-speaking destination, which it is from an international student point of view, then it is a really good opportunity up there with other countries in Europe, like the Netherlands or Ireland.
Yeah, so French is not the language barrier, but another opportunity for them to learn a new language.
Absolutely.
So based on your observation, do you know, can you tell that which sectors or roles are high demand in France?
Interestingly enough, the business is always going to be there, and the bulk of international students will go to business. Business, of course, is a big umbrella term. But within business, you have a whole range of skill sets and requirements and subjects which are very, very kind of advanced in France. For example, you have international trade and logistics is a very, very popular area. Supply chain management is growing in interest. Digital marketing and sales, data analytics for business. All these kind of subjects are very much in demand in France, and it's so banking and finance, the traditional areas. So anything that a student wants to do within the world of business is a really great opportunity. We work mostly with Kedge Business School, which in French terms is a very, very highly ranked grande école, which means great school. And they are in the top 10 French business schools. They're one of the top 1% of business schools worldwide, one of the top 15 in Europe. So it's a very, very highly ranked school. Less known outside the French-speaking world, but increasingly sort of has a more visible brand owing to the work of our colleagues in Kedge and ourselves as well, working in partnership. And they do very well for getting international students. And they have very good relationships with top companies in the sort of business sector, finding placements, internships, which lead into sort of great job opportunities. And many of those companies we're talking about are top multinationals, particularly French multinationals, who think and speak the language of English, etc., and provide those opportunities for the students. So that's one area. So anything to do with business is always going to be there. What you'll find as well, another growing area, is business with technology. So technology in the past was something that was separate. I mean, when I was a student, which is a long, long time ago, business and technology were two very, very discrete areas. Business was cool. Technology wasn't cool because it was kind of, those kind of students who were sort of like living in, in computers, etc. And they were
say IT guy.
The IT guys, So nowadays, the IT guys have a lot of power. And of course, what you find is more of a coming together over the past 20 years of, kind of love affair between sort of business and IT, where nowadays, this younger generation of, kind of tech-savvy kids are growing up, and it doesn't matter what area they're into, technology plays a role. So even the students who are going into fashion design are going to be using artificial intelligence. Kids who are into business are going to be doing financial technology, or they're going to do technology management. And so many areas are finding that those two cultures are sort of embracing each other. So, and it's interesting as well, because people who, in the past, business and technology didn't talk to each other, so you'd have very, very disparate aims within one particular company. Nowadays, they're kind of talking more or less the same language because, they're going hand in hand for most subjects. What you'll find as well, a really sort of powerhouse area now in France, and some people are surprised to learn that France is a major powerhouse when it comes to artificial intelligence. And that is really playing a role in the past couple of years. And now AI has been around since 1956, but sort of, nobody has been around since 1956, and nobody knows that. And AI has been around our lives for the past couple of years, but we've never really sort of kind of seen it catch up with us. We've always known it's there in the background, like in a car, and you're looking in the rear mirror, and it's like in the distance, and all of a sudden it's like overtaking you, and it's suddenly here. So ChatGPT has basically become something that is, in our living rooms, in our school classrooms, in our workplaces, and we're using that. And that is kind of like our introduction to AI. But AI is a huge kind of umbrella type area, which is very difficult to understand and penetrate. So the people who are going into artificial intelligence are true pioneers, almost like the explorers of the past, because it's a world that none of us understands. We all talk about it. We all do AI mashups, and we all look at sort of AI kind of images on our phone every day, and we can say, is this an AI image, that kind of thing. And maybe I'm talking as someone who truly doesn't understand it because I'm a lot older than you, and I think you guys are more comfortable around that. However, even I think people who are into technology sort of finding it difficult to navigate AI. And what you'll find is the AI guys are like the IT guys of 20, 30 years ago. They're the ones with the power, because they're the ones with this kind of esoteric knowledge that nobody else knows, arcane knowledge. It's kind of like, we need the IT guy, because they're almost talking a language that sort of is ancient and nobody understands it, and they have all this power.
Their own language.
Absolutely. And this is where
Coding.
we're encouraging students who, if I meet students nowadays and they say, I want to do computer science, or I want to do software engineering, or I want to do IT, I say, do artificial intelligence, because computer science, information technology, software engineering is all going to be dominated by AI. Banking is going to be dominated by AI. Fashion design is kind of involving AI. Everything is involving AI. And so these people who are going into AI having special skills keys to the kingdom that the rest of us are just simply not aware of. So with that in mind, we work with a university in France, an institution in France, which is called City. And this is the only institution in Europe devoted entirely to artificial intelligence. It's not just simply IT, artificial intelligence. The students are actually coming out with a bachelor in artificial intelligence, which gives them sort of skill sets and sort of status, which very few have at this moment. And, you know, it's completely 100% devoted to that. And it is the number one place in France to go for this. Interestingly enough, France is a major powerhouse when it comes to AI. It's third in Europe after the UK, after Germany, and then you have France. But France is more advanced in AI startups and AI development than countries that you wouldn't think of. It's higher than Sweden, it's higher than Finland, Denmark, Norway. It's higher than sort of countries here in Asia, like, Asia Pacific, like Australia, New Zealand, but also Taiwan, South Korea, which is really very surprising because we think of those as AI tech powerhouses, but France is actually sort of more well known for that. So with that in mind, I mean, you know, we'd encourage the students to actually, you know, give France a chance for that, because it really does offer opportunities. And again, everything is completely in English. And what is interesting about France is I would say that you know, I've spent 30 years in this business. I've worked with all the major education destinations. France is the one country that to me offers the best in terms of internships. So you need the internship to get the job. You need the internship to get the degree, whereas in other countries, you do the internship, you don't do it, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. But in France, it's absolutely essential to have that internship. And those internships you're going to do for AI are going to be, you know, nothing short of spectacular. We're talking about a snapshot of the French business landscape, the French technology landscape. So all students will get an internship in a top company, and from that internship, many of them get their jobs. So the whole Grande École system is designed to nurture students into careers, again, not jobs, and to get them into the workplace. And they are very much in demand because only 5% of the population go to these type of schools. And those students who are going to one of these type of schools for AI has a particularly special status. So I would say that's something worth thinking about. The other area, of course, is, it goes without saying, is fashion design. France, I mean, you'll have noticed that I've spent sort of, you know, the first portion of the presentation talking about how business and IT are pretty strong in France. The reason why is because students don't automatically think about French technology, to which I always say to them, well, have you flown in a plane recently? Was it a Boeing or was it an Airbus? An Airbus is French technology, of course. So French technology is pretty advanced. It has one of the best STEM environments in the world. But one thing we can't disagree with is when it comes to fashion design. I mean, when it comes to, you know, the world of fashion, luxury brand management, France is the leader par excellence. It's even a French word, French phrase, if you like. You know, it's the luxury brand capital of the world. It's the style capital of the world, the culture capital of the world, the shopping capital of the world. You know, it is chic style, sophistication, good living, joie de vivre, as we say in French, joy of life, all exists in this one little kind of sort of, you know, little universe, which is called Paris. It's like the Oxford and Cambridge of the fashion world, and it will always be there. There are pretenders. You know, Milan tries, London tries, New York tries. They've not got that kind of special cachet that France has. So Paris is there, and with that in mind, we encourage students to come on fashion programs, both in the creative side of fashion and design. In other words, the knitting, the needle, you know, the fashion design, pattern design, textile design, etc. Production, graphic design, games design, photography, interior architecture, sort of animation. All these type of areas are all very creative industries. We encourage students to come for that, but also students who are interested in the business side of fashion, which is huge business in France. You know, obviously, luxury brand management is huge. The richest man in France and the richest woman in France both made their money from Louis Vuitton and L'Oreal, respectively. So luxury brand management and fashion management is part of the business world as well. The other area, of course, which is huge, it goes without saying, is hospitality. France has the biggest hospitality industry in the world. 90 million visitors. The next country with the highest number of visitors is the United States, with about 70 million visitors. So France has got 20 million visitors more per year than the USA is. The thing is, of course, that sort of, you know, the country that dominates the thinking when it comes to travel and tourism is, of course, Switzerland. But France has some of the best hospitality schools in the world. They just don't shout about it as much as, say, Switzerland does. But they're very, very, very good schools. And, we hope to have a program next year leading into hospitality schools in France as well. So those are the four main areas that I think that students should think about, because France is a real, punches above its weight and is a real powerhouse for all four of those subject areas.
Since that Will, you mentioned that it's what we can design. People always like going for Paris because of like Paris fashion weeks. I think that this is the season that people won't miss out in the fashion industry. Is students or are students able to involve in this kind of activities during their studies?
Absolutely. When they come to do a fashion program, they're completely immersed within the world that they choose to go into. And of course, our design programs, our design pathways, are, they are designed to get students into multiple areas. So it can be in interior design, it can be in games design, it can be in graphic design. The most popular area, of course, is the fashion world. And what's interesting about that is we have, our partner Lisa has, and the other one is Istituto Marangoni, which is an Italian brand, but actually they have a Paris school as well, which is very, very popular. So students can actually choose to go to France or to Italy if they want to go and study. But it goes without saying that students are completely immersed within that culture of fashion and kind of style and good living, etc. In many, many different ways. They will visit, when they're doing their program with us, for example, we will help them prepare the portfolio for entry into a top design school, for example, like Lisa or Marangoni. So we will have tutors who will help them do that. But interestingly enough, they will have mentors coming from top fashion houses to be involved as well. So they will, so they're actually getting their tips on how to produce the perfect portfolio, and not just from our own in-house tutors who themselves have worked in top fashion houses or have worked in top art hubs. They will actually get it from people who are working for Givenchy or Chanel or Lacoste or, Estee Lauder or Louis Vuitton, something like that. And this is something really to sing about. And, out there in your city there, you have, thousands of people who are probably dreaming of the idea of going into studying fashion in Paris. It is treated as a very, very serious academic subject in France. It's not just for people who like, glamour and photo shoots and makeup tutorials on YouTube. It is treated as a very serious kind of industrial, kind of starting point, because it leads into pretty sort of lucrative careers. But they will be involved very much in sort of going and visiting these fashion houses, spending quality time with the people who run them, direct them, produce the quality materials for them, etc. They'll also spend lots of time doing what we call contextual studies, where they'll learn about art history and understand the context of why Paris is the design capital of the world. Why is it not Kuala Lumpur? Why is it not sort of, kind of Johor Bahru? Why is it not sort of Moscow? Why is it not, why is it not Los Angeles? It's Paris for a reason. And that's got a lot to do with Paris's kind of history as a major art hub and a kind of, a country which was, a city which was very much kind of, built on the arts. The whole city is like a great big museum, if you like. And so the students need to understand the context. For that, we take them to, museums and art galleries, and, we explain to them, all different aspects of different sort of art movements, etc. So it's not just a case of they go to the Louvre and we say, oh, guys, there's the Mona Lisa. We'll see you back here at 2:00. We actually guide them through the sort of, the whole kind of, ecosystem of art, so that they become real specialists, in both, art and art history, and of course the world of fashion, which of course is seen as a work of art in France. It's not just simply a sort of kind of a hobby. It's very much a serious subject, which is why they have that position. Yeah, so they spend a lot of time. They will do internships as well, so we call that learning by doing, where, obviously, an education in the West tends to involve a lot of practice and a lot less theory. I was talking to a student yesterday in Vietnam, and they're a fashion student, but they said that most of the teaching they have at the moment is a lot of theory, not much practice, not much kind of on the job learning, which is the exact opposite of how things are done in France, where you spend a lot of time sort of visiting companies and seeing how things in action. So you're putting into practice what you learn in the classroom. There's a lot less time in the classroom than people think.
Speaking about the internship, so some of the students might want to stay in France for their career after graduate. So Asian see these two points very important: the wages and also the working hours. Can you briefly share these 2 points to
The
our
work
audiences?
culture.
The work
Wow.
culture.
Well, the French working culture is something that other countries in the world look up to for many different reasons. I'll come to that in a second. But I did allude to earlier that France is all about careers, not jobs. And with that in mind, they have opportunities for post-study work, which means that students, when they finish if they finish a master's degree, they're allowed to sort of stay for 1 year on a post-study work visa,
Okay.
during which time they're allowed to sort of look for some work. 96% of the students get a job after 4 months. When we say a job, we're not saying a job in McDonald's or Burger King. We're talking about a proper job related to your subject.
Really a career.
Career-orientated job. They can actually work when they're students as well. So when you're studying in France, you're allowed to work up to 20 hours a week, which you get usually about 12 euros an hour, which adds up to about 8,000 euros per year, which obviously helps students, make a contribution towards their pocket money, their living expenses, their accommodation, or even their tuition. So that's something to bear in mind. When they go on an internship, they will be given the opportunity to do it. Maybe if it's a master's program, it's usually 6 months at the end of the master's program. If it's a bachelor program, it can be anything between 4 to 12 weeks, sometimes even up to 24 weeks, depending on the program, when you're actually a student. So there's a lot of time spent in companies, obviously learning by doing. You get paid if it's more than 12 weeks. So you actually, again, get the minimum wage, but it depends on the company. Sometimes they can pay you higher. So students are all really immersed in the world of work. They see how French companies operate. Oh, by the way, they don't have to stay in France. They can actually go to other countries in Europe. Remember, France is in the European Union, so it gives you the opportunity to go to 20 plus different, 27 countries, I think, in Europe, where you can actually go and do your internship, with Mercedes-Benz or Audi or Porsche or something like that in Germany, or you can go to Italy and do it with Italian companies. People go all over Europe to do their internships. But the point is that the internship is designed to get students into jobs at the end of this. So 60% of students will get jobs on the back of their internship. In other words, if you're performing well in the internship, they don't need to go and advertise for that job. If they've got somebody like yourself who shows talent, resilience, ambition, somebody who really wants to work hard and make a contribution, they will offer you a job there or invite you to join their graduate training scheme. So that's one of the ways that students find jobs. They also manage to find jobs through the sort of the intranet that we have in the school, whereby all the forums open up the jobs, and top companies in France will actually open up the job opportunities for students in the grande école before the others, because of course they are the elite students, if you like. But French culture is enviable when it comes to careers. For a start, when you begin your job, for example, you'll get your post-study work visa, but when you get your job, the starting salary for an organization like Kedge, which is our main business school partner, is about 42,000 euros a year, which is a higher starting salary than what you would get in, say, countries like the UK or other countries in Europe, like, say, Ireland or whatever. So it's pretty good. So that's a major selling point, and that's why sort of a lot of students go there. You would get a work permit as soon as you get the job, and it rolls over every single year. So as long as you're earning a certain amount of money each year, you can get the work permit for up to 4 years after that. So effectively, we're talking about a 5-year stay-back option, which students can use as their launch pad to go elsewhere in the world because they have this international qualification, or they can come back to their own country with a lot of experience and hopefully some money saved. And good, obviously, international credentials, which will stand them in good stead for the rest of their lives. But the French working culture, we were talking about that earlier on, is enviable. I think France, more than any other country in the world, gets the work-life balance correct. It's something that we really envy in the UK, where I'm from, because we work very, very long hours. And I wouldn't say that they're necessarily efficient long hours. We work hard, not necessarily smart. In France, they work both hard and smart. They tend to be very, very efficient within the time limits they have. For example, they have a 35-hour week. And you will get some people who go beyond that, but what they tend to do is honor that 35-hour week in order to be able to get their job done. So you don't get a lot of kind of things happening after hours in France. And weekends tend to be pretty sacrosanct. They tend to be for leisure time. They tend to be for time with the family. They tend to be for sort of weekends away, these kind of things. And they take those things very, very seriously. In fact, if you compare the American sort of work culture. And you might remember, I mean, going back to Emily in Paris, you might have noticed the sort of the cultural clash when it came to Emily's American style.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it's a TV program, so it's exaggerated, it's stereotypes, but the thing about any stereotype, there's always a sort of an element of truth in it, even if it's slightly tongue-in-cheek and humorous. But Emily in Paris, shows Emily to be, working, wanting to talk shop, wanting to talk about business in parties, and the French people are saying, don't talk about work at parties, at social events and things. And that is actually true to a certain extent. So they get the work-life balance right. I think the if you were to compare it to American culture, the Americans live to work, so they say. The French work to live. Life is the most important thing.
Yes.
Your career is something that pays for you to for your leisure time rather than the other way around.
Yes.
So, I think that sort of in Britain, where I'm from, it's somewhere half between the two, which makes me comfortable, because sometimes I do like to make the odd work-like phone call after sort of hours. I do like to sort of, do things at the weekend to catch up and stuff like that. But I'm not saying that, obviously every country is different. And I think for our, if you compare that to say, the type of lifestyle balance they have in your Chinese cousins over in the People's Republic, it's very, very different. And here in Asia, your work-life balance tends to be very, very different. It's kind of, very, very hardworking, time-consuming, sort of time-orientated, efficient, but at the same time, it's very, very long and hard. But I think that sort of students would be kind of interested in sort of how France works. They offer good salaries. Everything is guaranteed and enshrined in law. This is a culture where the employee matters. The employee is pretty important. The employee rights are considered sacrosanct. And that's good. It can be frustrating at times. For example, obviously trying to sort of kind of get rid of a poor worker in a French company is, you might have heard, stereotypically, it's very, very difficult. So, however, at least the sort of the rights of the individual are protected. So I think in one way it can be seen as a good thing.
I think
Pros
we
and
will.
cons comes together.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
I will consider write my resign letter later.
So you are trying to
I'll fly to
fly
Paris.
Okay.
Well, here's the other thing. In France, they take things very seriously. Just recently in the UK, for example, I mean, for men, the age of retirement was 65 traditionally.
Yes.
For women, it was 60. And then they increased it for women to 62, I believe, and they increased it to 67 for men. And in England, this was met with a shrug of the shoulders. Oh, well, we have to work 3 years longer. Okay. All right. What a shame. Oh, well, okay. I'll start sort of, kind of, my allotment or take up golf when I'm 67 instead of 65. In France, they raised it from 62 to 64 for men, and they came out in the streets, and there was riots, and there were burning cars, and there was smashing windows, and rioting, and having strikes and everything.
Wow.
And the reason why is because they take that thing very, very serious.
Yes.
The state and the way that French view that is they see that the state is betraying them because they spent most of their working life working with a view to retiring at 62, and then somebody says you have to do it to 64.
2 more years.
That's a betrayal. So they vote with their feet. They vote with the kind of their matches and their petrol, and come out on the streets and say this isn't good enough. In the end, they still have to retire at 64, but they made their intentions very, very clear.
Unfortunately.
We didn't do that in England. It was like, oh, okay, all right. Well.
Okay, we'll work.
Okay.
What's on TV tonight?
We'll accept it. Okay, accept the statement. Okay. But because just now we mentioned that Paris or France is really I would say the most popular tourist spot. Does it mean that more and more talents coming into France? Will that be more competitive for students who would like to stay in France for seeking a career for them?
There's always going to be competition in the work environment, and I think the world in general, sort of for international students, has got more and more competitive. With that, obviously, there's been a drive amongst international students not to give up and say, "Oh, I'm going to get a job." You have to work that bit extra to get a job. In the world economy at the moment, things have become a little bit more kind of where I think for international students and students in general, I think the world is a little bit more tense, a little bit more daunting for them when I was an international student. You know, for example, in China, you know, there's issues with the demographics, there's issues with the sort of, you know, kind of the economy. Students are watching, or parents are watching what they spend, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the drive there in certain countries is to sort of get their kids as well educated as they possibly can, and possibly even more well educated, be more competitive than they themselves, the parents, were. And, you know, I see that with my own children. I mean, all my children have gone to really, really good universities. They've gone and got master's degrees where I didn't need a master's degree when I was a student. I just survived. I've survived most of my life with just a bachelor's degree, because that was what we did. Nowadays, they're getting master's degrees and they're getting additional qualifications, certificates on top of that, to make themselves more competitive. So I think that competitive urge is always going to be amongst international students. International students tend to be more hardworking and more competitive than local students, because local students always have safety nets to fall back upon. Whereas if you're an international student, you're being sent over by your parents, money involved. There's a kind of sense of achievement that needs to be made. And there's a sense of kind of achievement in having reached there and not letting your parents down. For many international students, they're paid by sponsors, so they don't want to let down their government. And in many cases, you know, for example, in China, they have to go to really, really top universities, get really, really good degrees, because if they want to come back and work in China, they have to have gone to one of these type of universities, not just any old university. So, you know, I really feel for international students because it's a much more competitive environment. But what we try and do as educators is to make that to demystify that whole process as much as possible, to make it as seamless as possible, to give them the right kind of routes, the right kind of advice, the right kind of counseling. And this is where people like yourselves come in, because you know what you're talking about. You know, all too often in this day and age, the kids kind of shoot themselves in the foot, as we say in English, by going and finding out information on social media and talking to people in sort of other countries who are talking nonsense to them about different types of education. It's the kind of thing where you really need to come to an expert who knows how to make the right choice at the right time for the right kind of place. And obviously, if you work hard, you do what you can to put yourself in the best possible position. So yes, in terms of the competition and the competitive edge that students in France get, it is in the Grande École system. You know, somewhere like Kedge, somewhere like Avon City, they are Grande École. Only 5% of kids go there. So they are in an elite group of students. It doesn't mean they can relax and rest on their laurels and say, oh, I don't have to study now because I'm in a Grande École. They still have to go that extra mile, make sure they get noticed by employers to be in that strong position. Because it is all about competition, absolutely. But I wouldn't say for international students it's more difficult, because it depends where you go. I mean, I think sometimes, you know, students will make the mistake by going to a place like Germany and they'll get like free education or kind of very, very cheap education. And then they, you know, but cheap doesn't necessarily mean good. You have to look at what the outcomes of that education are, because being educated is just one small stepping stone on the way to your fulfillment of a career. But you get students going to Germany who will end up doing engineering, learning in German, and they come out with a very, very poor knowledge of German, a very poor knowledge of English. What do they end up doing? They end up driving taxis or working in kebab shops or things like that. Not Malaysian students, they come from a completely different background, but there are certain kind of, you know, source countries where they tend to go into those type of work, very type of casual work. And it's just a long kind of, you know, series of very casual jobs that they end up doing during their career. Our students in this part of the world tend to be very, very ambitious and very, very focused. But you're giving yourself the best start by going to the kind of school that puts you on the ladder towards success. In other words, your first step on that ladder is a Grande École, then it's your internship, and from there, you're obviously acquiring additional skills on the way, which makes you very competitive. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for international students who really want to stay in France for their career and for their studies? Do you have any advice?
Absolutely. I'd say give France a chance. Hey, that rhymes. I'm a poet and I didn't know it. Okay. Give France a chance. Hey, that should be my sort of... It sounds a bit too desperate, but when I say that, I mean sort of, you know, obviously look at France. It is one of the best places, if not the best place for international students, but we just don't know it. But when you start to look in through, lift up the box and lift the lid on France and you look at what's inside, it's got lots of little surprises that hopefully sort of your listeners and viewers have heard a bit. I hope they're more educated about France after today's conversation. The advice I give to students going to France is the advice that I would give to any student, is when you are going to university, all too often we're driven by the kind of the aims and ambitions of our parents trying to live through us. So they want us to be lawyers, they want us to be doctors, they want to be engineers, and the kid really wants to be a photographer.
Yes.
Really, what you want to do, because we only have one life, and hopefully it's going to be long, and we're all going to die in bed at 120 years old. But if you do that, you want it to be something that you're good at, something you enjoy, and something that's going to give you a comfortable existence. Not necessarily loads and loads of money, but if you want to be a gazillionaire, there are ways and means of doing that. But sometimes students who want to be gazillionaires end up doing things that they don't like,
Yes.
but they're good at. But I think that for satisfaction on life, and I think this is what ultimately our job is all about. It's not simply about sort of ways to make really money, great money. You meet a lot of kids in my business who say, what do you want to do when you're older? I want to make loads of money. Okay, so I want to be a business person, which is fine. We've got channels for those kids to do that. But most kids just want to basically sort of do something that they enjoy, that they're good at. And if you do something you enjoy and you're good at, you'll have a really, really happy sort of career, because you will make whatever you need out of that. It could involve lots of money. It can involve, you probably want to, we all need to survive. So I'm not saying, just live on an island and meditate and everything will be fine, take up yoga. That's another way of looking at things. But, at the same time, sort of, we do want to make money. And we do want to be comfortable in our existence. So, it is all about lifestyle opportunities at the moment. The kids of today sort of are much more savvy than my generation was. When I went to university, it was like, oh my God, I need to get to university, because it was a real privilege from, from my background. For example, going to university was like something that nobody did. It was like, oh, wow, you're really strange. When I said I wanted to go to university, my parents, I could have gone to my parents and said, I want to get married to a dog, and they would have thought it was as strange. It was considered a very, very strange thing. But having done that, we all make sort of choices, but it's all about making the right choice at the right time for the right kind of place. It's all about, kids today have they're a lot more savvy. They're subjected to a lot more sources of information, sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Yeah.
You represent the good side of information that presented to them, and that's the positive. Sometimes there's bad information they get from TikTok and nonsense like that.
Yeah.
But and they learn their history from TikTok. They learn about sort of geography from TikTok. They learn about sort of international education from TikTok. But what we say to kids is, look, make those choices, get the right kind of information. You have a lot of choice about where you go, because your generation is, the average kid nowadays who's been born is going to have lived in 10 different countries by the age of 50. They're going to have 10 different jobs by the age of 40. They'll be trilingual at least. If they're not trilingual, they'll have AI doing it for them. So it's a really interesting sphere. The kids have got so many opportunities in front of them, and they just need to kind of get the right advice on that.
Yeah. We can't stop students to get more information, but they need to filter themselves. I would say like this. Yeah. So thank you, Will, for having us today and sharing this fruitful section to us. Then, if you are interested to study in France, please feel free to drop a message to us. And then, if you enjoyed this episode, please like and share or subscribe our channel. See you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.